Back in the vegetable garden, the salad red and salad blue potatoes are nearly ready for harvesting. Tom and Mike, an under-gardener, are assessing if they need to be sprayed with Bordeaux mixture, a chemical that combats potato blight.
Snowdrop and salad red, that got ridged out. We shouldn't have done that. And the rest of the last three are salads.
Yeah.
So Lord Rosebery,
Yeah.
King Edward,
Yeah.
and Edsel Blue is all coming out this week.
Yeah, so there's no point of doing them, is there?
Mate, Mike, you want to start on the end.
Start out this end and work in,
Start on
eh?
these salads and work in.
Yeah, right.
So the end three can... Oh, hell, look at this. We've got to do this week, haven't we?
Yes, we certainly have, haven't we?
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
We're practicing systems that were used in late Victorian, early Edwardian times. I would prefer to use organic systems, but there are some crops which mightn't do as well as normal if they didn't have non-organic treatments. I mean, Bordeaux mixture to treat blight on potatoes, for example, is allowed under organic principles, but I would prefer not to use it.
Right. So I start right here now, shall I?
Well, it looks like it.
Yeah.
When you get high temperatures and high humidity, you get conditions perfect for the spread of blight. So you must spray Bordeaux mixture, which is a preventative measure. And so we have to do it once a fortnight. Copper sulfate and lime mixed. It overwinters in the tubers. It would have been used by the old head gardener here for certain, from about 1860, 1870 onwards. They used all sorts of fiendish potions. Glasshouses were regularly fumigated with nicotine, tobacco to knock certain pests on the head. And those we would not encourage these days. Well, this is a damping down process that we have to do a lot through the summer months, especially with these cucumbers. Keep the bed nice and wet. It keeps down the red spider mite, which is a big problem in glasshouse crops, especially on these, which have huge leaves and the mites spread fast. They like hot, dry conditions, so if we can get the place nice and damp, the floor as well and the walls, then it helps to keep them down. Victorians would have kept this glasshouse soaking wet all the time, damped it down. They had any amount of labour, young boys to come in and do this sort of thing 7 days a week. We had a dry winter, very, very cold. We lost a lot of stuff. We then moved on into an extremely dry spring. And now we're getting a sort of wettish midsummer with poor light levels, which means that, you know, the difficult growing season continues. So anyway, we're rained off today and we're only here doing these chrysanthemums. But no, I'm not disappointed. It's difficult. That's half the fun of gardening, trying to combat all these, how do you say that word, combat, what does it, how do you pronounce it, do you know? Anyway, so we're trying to get over it.
Nearly a year ago, Tom and Philip predicted that by late summer, these pineapples would produce fruit for the first time. The pineapple pit they've restored is an ingenious structure that dates back to the early 1700s. Today, it's the only one left in Britain. Last winter, just as they would have done 150 years ago, they filled these trenches with horse manure. The heat from the manure passes through the pigeonholes, creating the consistently high temperature that the pineapples need. But with no written records, Philip and Tom had no way of knowing how often they should replace the manure to keep the heat constant. August, and the moment of truth.
Still looking for the elusive flower bud.
It's all been somewhat of a bit of a disaster, but it's recovering nicely.
Well, they have picked up well, despite the fact we've had poor summer.
We really just, well, not exactly failed, but we didn't do the best we can.
Well, we lost a good few because of the condensation dripping down into the centre of the plant and the cold getting in on top of that. We lost a lot.
We'll probably have to redo our hotbeds 3 times this winter instead of twice. Hell of a lot of labour to have to dig all these out and manure them with hot material. But if we're really going to keep the temperature up in this pit during the winter, it's the only way we're going to do it.
But I suspect this is a full-time job for a couple of people, almost solely, doing nothing else. And that, of course, we find difficult to fit into our schedule. Still.
It's interesting, I mean, how we've struggled to get where we have and learnt all we have along the way. And to think that these chaps were producing pineapples that varied between 12 and 18 pounds each. And the care and attention that must have gone into maintaining the temperature, maintaining the growth, feeding them, watering them. There must have been people looking after them almost continuously.
It's not all been failures. The end of the summer and the gardens are bursting with produce. True to the Victorian tradition of extending the season, the 16 varieties of potatoes sown back in March are still being lifted. The salad red and salad blue were the last in line. As soon as one crop comes out, another goes in. This time it's winter cabbage, protected by a seaweed mulch, which also acts as a repellent to the cabbage root fly. In the modern age of the supermarket, it's easy to forget that the produce from these gardens kept the staff and the inhabitants of the big house alive.
The object here is to provide a demonstration of an active, productive Victorian or Edwardian kitchen garden. As a result of that, you have produce. What are we going to do with those? In 1995, we had our first full year of using the whole productive garden. And that then set us on the road of thinking about what we would do with this produce. It's the intention that the crops would be harvested as and when they were ready. In other words, as and when the big house would have taken them.
Everybody who lived within the estate would have benefited from the produce grown in the productive gardens. And that's something that we're trying to continue today. So the produce that we grow here gets used, it's eaten by us, some of it's sold to visitors who come round. But it almost all gets used up in one way or another.
Tonight it's the grand feast, this time for the Heligan staff. Just as in the days of the Tremaines, Tom has to discuss menus with the cook.
Morning, Tom.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Are you?
Good. Not too bad.
One feast menu.
Right, we're all set.
What have we got and what haven't we got?
Now, 5 pounds of carrots.
Yes,
Can
please.
arrange that, there's no problem.
Good. And plenty of onions and celery.
Yeah, we've got all that.
To make some stock. Yeah.
Plenty of that.
Plenty of French beans and spinach.
French beans, we've got loads. We've got all different colours. We've got purples, light yellows, greens, all sorts. So
Oh.
we bring a mix of those.
Smashing. Yeah. Spinach and chard.
Yeah, we've got lots of both of those.
Smashing. Okay. And fresh fruits, soft fruits.
Yeah, we've got all the currants. Yeah, we've got gooseberries,
Yeah.
red
Raspberries.
currants, white currants, raspberries. So that's okay.
Lovely.
We've got
Mixing
everything,
and
really, haven't
decide. You've got everything.
we? What about the potatoes?
Yes, please. Yeah. plenty of potatoes.
Yeah, and we'll try and get you those blue and red
The blue and
salad
red ones, yeah.
So we'll get that up to you as soon as we can.
Smash it?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
For Gillian, it's her private moment of glory. The flowers that she sowed back in June are ready for harvest. In Victorian times, these would have taken pride of place on the Tremaine's top table. Nearly 100 years later, it's as if time has stood still.
Nowadays, running the garden in a Victorian tradition is only in terms of the plants and the methods we use. There is no similarity within the way the labour is used or the way the labour is organised. In a Victorian garden, there was a very definite hierarchy. Head gardener through foreman, right down to garden boy. It had its own levels of knowledge, which were not passed down to levels below you. It was all part of the muck and magic myth syndrome, which gave you your position. And people worked long hours. Opportunities were small. Wages weren't high. Nowadays, wages still aren't high, but people work many hours less. The position of women in society generally is also reflected in horticulture. There's plenty of opportunity for women to go to the senior levels. So there's little or no comparison between the people who are working in the garden today and those who worked here in the old days. Having said that, what we're doing is still a homage to that tradition.
This project is going to go on at the level that it has been, the level of success that it's found in a short space of time.
Going to try some of these?
I'd love to. It needs a lot of enthusiasm and hard work and dedication. The idea is to get this garden into a situation whereby anyone can take it over and carry on the good work that we've started. Chard makes a good replacement for spinach, doesn't it? It says spinach. So I would think that the next 3 or 4 years would be a time of great importance to make it into a place that people continue to want to come to and derive pleasure from.
We have this pie.
We were really thinking, we were debating whether you were going to get a telegram from the
are you
Queen
here? Are you?
this
Oh,
year
I
or
thought you
next year.
No, that wasn't nice.
No.
An updated edition of The Lost Gardens of Heligan by Tim Smith is available in most bookshops from February the 8th, price £15. Highlights of the series are also available on video from usual retail outlets, price $14.99. Next on 4, we got Brookside.
It was like one of the orchestras in heaven that you didn't play in. You just aspired to in your dreams.
I'm resigning.